Welcome to Jaiki Health, where we break down complex health topics in simple terms. Today we're diving into a critical but often misunderstood topic: vitamin B12 absorption problems in the human body. Why is it that sometimes, even when we consume enough B12, our bodies can't use it? And how can we solve this issue? Stay tuned to discover the fascinating journey of B12 through your body, the surprising role gut bacteria play, and actionable steps to ensure you're getting the B12 you need. Now, let's look at how B12 is supposed to be absorbed in a healthy body. It's one of the most complex absorption processes of any nutrient and requires multiple steps to work properly. When we consume B12 in food, it's often bound to proteins. The journey begins in the mouth, where our saliva contains proteins called R binders that initially attach to some free B12. As the food reaches our stomach, hydrochloric acid and an enzyme called pepsin separate B12 from food proteins. Meanwhile, special cells in the stomach lining, called parietal cells, secrete a crucial substance called intrinsic factor. At this stage, B12 continues to bind with R binders, not with intrinsic factor yet. As the partially digested food enters the small intestine, pancreatic enzymes break down the R binders, freeing the B12 to finally bind with intrinsic factor. This B12 intrinsic factor complex travels through the small intestine until it reaches the final section called the ileum. Here, specialized receptors called cubolin and amnionless on the intestinal cells recognize the complex and absorb it into the bloodstream. Once in circulation, B12 binds to transport proteins, primarily transcobalamin 2, which delivers it to cells throughout the body. There are several key points in this complex process where B12 absorption can fail. Let's explore the main reasons B12 isn't absorbing properly. First, inadequate stomach acid. As we age, many people produce less stomach acid, making it harder to separate B12 from food proteins. Similarly, people taking acid-reducing medications like proton pump inhibitors or H2 blockers for heartburn or ulcers may not have enough acid to free B12 from food. Second, intrinsic factor problems. The most well-known cause is pernicious anemia, an autoimmune condition where the body attacks and destroys the parietal cells that produce intrinsic factor. Without intrinsic factor, B12 cannot be absorbed regardless of how much you consume. Partial or total gastrectomy, surgical removal of the stomach, also removes the source of intrinsic factor. Third, intestinal disorders. Conditions that damage the ileum, where B12 absorption occurs, can prevent proper absorption. These include Crohn's disease, celiac disease, tropical sprue, and radiation treatment to the abdomen. Parasitic infections can also interfere with proper absorption. Fourth, pancreatic insufficiency. Without adequate pancreatic enzymes, the R binders won't be properly degraded, preventing B12 from binding to intrinsic factor. And finally, certain medications can interfere with B12 absorption, including metformin for diabetes, cholestyramine for high cholesterol, and certain antibiotics. Now, let's discuss a fascinating and often overlooked factor in B12 absorption: our gut bacteria. The relationship between B12 and gut bacteria is complex and bidirectional. First, some bacteria in our gut actually produce B12, though it's debated how much of this bacterial B12 we can actually absorb. Most B12-producing bacteria live in the large intestine, beyond the ileum where B12 absorption occurs. More importantly, an imbalance in gut bacteria can significantly impact B12 absorption. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, occurs when bacteria that normally reside in the large intestine migrate and overgrow in the small intestine. These bacteria can consume B12 before our bodies have a chance to absorb it, essentially competing with us for this vital nutrient. Research shows that certain gut bacteria can alter the structure of B12, converting it into analogs that have no vitamin activity in humans. In fact, gut bacteria in the large intestine can transform about 80% of unabsorbed B12 into these inactive forms. Additionally, certain gut infections like Helicobacter pylori can damage the stomach lining, reducing intrinsic factor production and stomach acid, creating a double blow to B12 absorption. The gut microbiome is also affected by B12 levels. Adequate B12 seems to promote a healthier, more diverse gut bacterial community, which in turn may improve B12 absorption. How do you know if you're not absorbing enough B12? The symptoms can be subtle at first because your liver stores enough B12 to last 3 to 5 years. But eventually, deficiency signs will emerge. In more advanced cases, causing symptoms like shortness of breath and extreme neurological symptoms can worsen to include difficulty walking, vision changes, and even dementia-like symptoms. If left untreated, B12 deficiency can cause permanent nerve damage and cognitive impairment. That's why recognizing these symptoms early is crucial. If you suspect B12 deficiency, proper testing is essential. A standard B12 blood test is usually the first step, but it's not always reliable. That's because it measures total B12 in your blood, not the active form your body can use. More accurate tests include measuring methylmalonic acid and homocysteine levels, which rise when B12 is low. A complete blood count can detect the characteristic large red blood cells that develop in B12 deficiency. For those with symptoms but normal B12 levels, testing for antibodies against intrinsic factor or parietal cells can help diagnose pernicious anemia. In some cases, doctors may recommend a trial of B12 supplementation to see if symptoms improve. Remember, normal B12 levels don't always rule out a functional deficiency, especially if you have symptoms. Working with a healthcare provider familiar with B12 deficiency is important for proper diagnosis. Now for the solutions. How can we fix B12 absorption problems? The approach depends on the underlying cause. First, B12 injections. These go straight into your muscle, skipping the digestive system. They're usually given often at first, and then once a month to keep your levels up. Second, high-dose oral supplements. Even if your gut has trouble absorbing B12, large doses 1,000–2,000 mcg a day might still work. That's because a small amount can still be absorbed without the help of your digestive system. Third, gut issues, like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. If your gut bacteria are out of balance, you need to fix that first. This might mean taking antibiotics to clear out harmful bacteria and then probiotics to bring back the good ones. Fourth, pancreatic problems. If your pancreas isn't working well, it can affect nutrient absorption. In that case, enzyme supplements taken with meals may help you absorb B12 and other nutrients better. Prevention is always better than treatment. Here are strategies to optimize your B12 status. First, maintain good gut health. A diverse, fiber-rich diet promotes beneficial gut bacteria. Fermented foods like yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, and kimchi can help maintain a healthy microbiome. Second, consider periodic B12 supplementation, especially if you're over 50, as absorption naturally decreases with age. Third, if you're vegan or vegetarian, regular B12 supplementation is not optional. It's essential. Don't wait for symptoms to develop. Fourth, If you take medications known to affect B12 absorption, discuss monitoring with your doctor. Fifth, address digestive symptoms promptly. Chronic heartburn, bloating, or changes in bowel habits could signal conditions that affect B12 absorption. Finally, get regular checkups. Request B12 testing as part of your routine blood work, especially if you have risk factors or symptoms. B12 absorption. From understanding the intricate process of normal absorption to identifying the many points where this process can break down. We've seen how our gut bacteria both help and hinder B12 utilization, and explored comprehensive solutions for ensuring adequate B12 levels. Remember, B12 deficiency is common, but often overlooked. Its symptoms can mimic many other conditions, making it a great imitator in medicine. By understanding your personal risk factors and taking proactive steps, you can prevent the serious consequences of long-term deficiency. At JIQE Health, we believe knowledge is power. We hope this video has empowered you to take control of your B12 health. If you found this information valuable, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share with friends and family who might benefit. Have you experienced B12 deficiency or absorption issues? Share your story in the comments below, and let us know what health topics you'd like us to cover next. Thank you for watching JIQE Health, where we translate complex health science into practical wisdom for everyday wellness.